Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the podcast. I'm grateful that you've chosen to tune in, whether you're listening on whatever platform or watching on YouTube. Welcome. This is going to be an incredible episode. I got to share this one with someone that's been on the podcast 2 times before and someone that's a really, really good friend of mine. Her name is Sally Jane Douglas. And on this episode, we have a discussion about discovering pleasure and connection in everyday moments of your life. So a few key things that we talk about: learning to feel pleasure and your senses all over your body, pleasure beyond sexuality. Sometimes we think of pleasure as just sexual, and it's like there's so much more to it. And she talks a lot about this. How to get out of your head and into your pleasure, the deep self-connection most people are missing because of life, because of technology and all these things. We are so disconnected. We don't know how to feel our emotions, let alone pleasure. So how to connect back in to yourself and your body. The power of open communication, essential conversations for intimacy, especially in relationships. Mindfulness in everyday moments, mindfulness versus mindlessness, and also a transformational moment that Sally had on a Sensual Retreat. You're just going to have to tune in and listen to all of it. There is so many really, really good points in here. I learned so much, and I think the key thing from here is coming at this with an open mind and not having any expectation and just being willing to learn. And I learned so much, and I hope you do too. Also, I just want to share that I am so grateful for all of your support. Wherever you're listening, whether you've subscribed, left a review on social media, if you've shared these things, these clips across and to your community, to your families, whatever it may be, it means the world to me to see on, whether it's YouTube Shorts or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Like, I think if you add up all the numbers, we're closing in on 2 million views in just a couple of weeks, which is just absolutely insane. And I'm so, so grateful. That doesn't equate to, anything really. If people come and listen to the podcast, amazing. If people follow me and want more inspiration and conscious conversations, then incredible. It's great data to see that these messages are reaching a lot of people, and that's because of you guys sharing it. So if you could remember to follow, to share, and get this out there to more people, then that would absolutely make my day and help me do more of what I love, which is sharing these conversations. So thank you so much. Also, another exciting thing, getting back into this podcast and getting back into the things that I'm really passionate about and that I feel are my purpose. I've got a lot of things coming up and that are being released, and I can't really share now because, by the time this goes up, you might miss it or whatever. I have events coming up that are seminars, talks, live shows with previous guests that might be in your town. You can buy a ticket and come join us. I also have my community membership, the Conscious Collective, that you can come in and learn. It's a full year membership of events, of community, workshops, all these cool things, and my 8-week Conscious Blueprint program. I'm not going to say any more. If you're interested, go to the link in the show notes. It'll be the link to my profile. That's where you can see all the information about these things. You're feeling like you want to go a little bit deeper. You're feeling like it's the time in your life to make a change and really connect deeper to yourself. And for me, it's know thyself, love thyself, be thyself. Then this could be really cool for you. So if that's something you're interested in, go check it out. See if it aligns for you. Either way, I'm grateful for you being here and enjoy this episode. Sally, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm excited for this chat. We've been discussing a few things and we're like, okay, let's just let this flow and see where it goes. What have you been up to? How's life been for you in the past? I think the last time we spoke was maybe a year ago. Talk to me. What's been happening in your world? Because you have been on the podcast before twice, so people I'll link them in the show notes if you want to go back and check them out. What have you been up to recently?
Well, I don't know if I was living in Melbourne then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So still in Melbourne, and I'm settled in Melbourne, and I've just really been immersing myself in Melbourne life because I didn't know when I moved here how long I would be here and if I would move back to the Sunshine Coast. And I grew up here, and I always said, I'm not coming back. And here I am. And it's been amazing to have a completely different experience. And I'm feeling a lot very expansive here. Like, got ideas about my own podcast and writing a book, and I'm getting into keynote speaking, and all of these things. I just feel like my world has kind of opened up since being here. Business, life, love, all the things. So it's very exciting.
It's one of those things where like me being in Melbourne is like, I want to go up north because I feel like that's where the expansion would happen and all these ideas. But you've come from Sunshine Coast to Melbourne and it's still happening, which is really cool because it just shows it does not matter where you are. It's just different energy, different environment.
But it is common. Like, I speak to so many people, and I was one of them when I was here, and then I wanted to move to the Sunshine Coast because we want the beach and we want the lifestyle, and that's exactly what I did, and I felt that, and that's why I was still there. But I'm just able to adapt and then make the best of wherever I am, and now I'm like genuinely happy here. Not feeling like, okay, I'm going to move in 6 months or whatever it may be. And yeah, the city energy, like there's more going on. There's always something to do. And it does feel exciting. And I'm just making the most of the opportunities. I think we just, as like a practice in life, is to make the most of wherever we are. And, people used to say, I've always had people say to me, I've always lived like maybe between two places. And when I was in one place, they'd be like, oh, don't you wish you were there? And then I'd get there and, oh, don't you wish you were there? And I was like, that would mean I would always be missing something and always be wishing I was not where I was. And that just never made any sense to me. Mm-hmm. And when I say that to people, they're like, oh yeah, that is just like creating suffering and misery. So I'm just, I don't live like that.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate. Like, especially when I was living in my van and traveling up the East Coast, it was like the freedom to do that. And at that point I was like, this is what I wanted. And then I was like, but I miss my family and my friends, and everyone was back in Melbourne and Mildura. And then when I last year got grounded in Mildura for like a year with my studio and all that, it was like, okay, but now I miss Melbourne because there's so many people there and things on. Then I came to Melbourne, I'm like, been here for a good year, and I'm like, I miss Mildura where it's relaxed. And it's, at the same time, is like, there's certain things keeping me here right now, and I'm like, exactly what you said, make the most of it, because if I'm always looking for that next thing, I'm just never going to be happy in this spot now. And this season of life, I think that also comes into it, of like, you're in this spot, this is that chapter, this season. Yeah, make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think once we nail that in life, it gets a lot easier and more enjoyable, and that's when we can be content and fulfilled,
Because you've had a very interesting life, hence why you're on the podcast, but you've gone through so many different evolutions in the past. I think I've known you for maybe 6 years, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. What evolution are you at right now?
It's interesting you ask that right now, and we're talking right now, because I have been, over the last few months, like being really curious about where I want to go, where I want to take my life, my business, deciding, okay, I'm going to be in Melbourne, and feeling into, okay, I want to speak, I want a podcast, and I've had my own business now for 6 years running mentoring, and that's just kind of flowed organically as to what I was focusing on at any one point in the different programs that I was facilitating and running. And I was thinking about it recently and in a bit of denial of the direction that was calling me, because it felt a little bit too big, a little bit too scary, and a little bit like, can I do that? And so I've always worked with women, and generally it's been around women's empowerment and the relationship with themselves and connecting with themselves. And then, of course, what flows, everything just flows, and it's always turned into relationship coaching with the woman. But generally, they're coming to me with challenges in relationship. And so that's just been something that's kind of been an evolution in my work. And I love it, because I love relationship. I thrive in relationship. I love supporting people in relationship. But I never really identified as a relationship mentor. It was just what women were presenting as they were coming to me. And so, yeah, recently I'm like, okay, I was asking a few people, like, how do you see me in my work, whether they were clients or friends? And they were all saying the same thing. And I was just like, no. They were all saying intimacy, sensuality, pleasure, relationship with yourself. And I was like, oh gosh, and it just kept coming and coming and coming, and I was like, I know that, but it's when it's so natural and innate within ourselves, when we have something that's so natural and innate, that it's like, oh, is that what people, and they're like, that's what people want, that's what people come to you for, that's what people are drawn to you about, this confidence, this connection to self. And so I was just in denial, like, no, I don't need to like focus my business on that. But it is what I love and it's what I do. It just hasn't been this full stop, this is what I do. And that conviction of that and that choosing that and that landing on that felt big and a bit scary. And so now I have arrived there, but for months I was just like, no, let's find something else. Can we deflect? You know, it just felt like a little, overwhelming. So that's, I guess, the next evolution that I'm stepping into.
Yeah, and it's so cool that it comes so naturally. Like it wasn't something that's completely off center, totally different. Like you haven't turned into, I'm looking at plants now, like a plant person coaching people on plants or whatever it may be. Like it's still within the realm. It's just the next evolution of it, and it was always coming up. So relationships. We had Simi Gosling on the podcast not long ago. And we're just talking about like how, even actually with Jamie, the last episode, like everything kind of stems from those relationships, and especially when you're, doing work on yourself, and you can call it quote unquote the healing journey, is relationships come up, whether it's the ones that we've had growing up or how they've affected us, or the relationship with ourselves. So it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, why was it so overwhelming? Was it just the fact that I've never held that one space? It's always been something different?
No, because I have. Like in my work I have. It was like this public, external stating. And because it's not just, it's more about sensuality and intimacy and sexuality, which in all of my coaching and all of my programs, we totally go there. Everyone wants to talk about that. Everyone wants to connect more deeply. Everyone wants more intimacy, especially women. They want more pleasure. They want all of that, and they want to know how they can develop that. So I've always gone there and taught that, and I love it. But to kind of put the stake in the ground, this is what I do in this one area. I don't know, it just felt edgy, which is just so funny because it is what I do, and it is something that I'm very comfortable in. But I think the point that you made, that everything comes back to relationship, whether it's the relationship with ourselves, because, the longest relationship we have is the one with ourselves. We go to bed with ourselves. We wake up with ourselves every single day. But in relationship, and especially intimate relationship, whether it's looking back on past relationships or relationships we're in now, we learn so much in relationship, and that's how we grow, especially like in friendships as well. But in an intimate relationship, when you spend a lot of time with that person, and they're literally your mirror, and they are the ones that maybe trigger you in certain areas, which is opportunity for growth and all. Like it's so rich and sometimes challenging and all of the things. But I love it so much. It just excites me. It's like, oh, look at this opportunity we have, and I just thrive in partnership and relationship. So it's my favorite thing to also support women in. So now it just feels like, oh, of course. It's just so funny that I was kind of freaked out about it. But, sometimes that happens.
It just kind of naturally evolves into that next thing.
Yeah.
So you were saying that this is like these topics are the things that were mostly getting brought up when you were maybe teaching about something else, or maybe the overarching genre of what you were covering in your programs and mentoring and coaching. Why do you think that is? Why do women want to, or why do people want to learn more about intimacy and sexuality and all of that? Yeah.
Well, I think for women, because I work with women, right? So if I'm just focusing on women, we are not really encouraged to externally express sexuality. If you do, then you can be like, oh, and you get labeled something temptress or promiscuous or whatever it is, or worse. And so that side
they're the nice.
Yeah, I know.
They're the
nicer
ones.
ones. I don't even want to say them because it's like, it's so ridiculous. But that is not how we want to be labelled or seen. So that then creates this suppression within ourselves around sensuality and sexuality. And then how we grew up, generally speaking. Like, I didn't grow up in a household where my parents talked openly about sex and it was this normal conversation. Like, if anything came on the TV, I was just like, oh my gosh, I just want to like curl up and die, because I was like, oh. So it wasn't this freely spoken about conversation. And then generally speaking, just the expression of connection, even just sensuality for women, pleasure. Like, if you ever say the word pleasure, people just think sexual pleasure, right? But pleasure comes in all forms, and like 98% of it is just pleasure of the sun on your face or sipping the coffee in the morning. And then yes, it involves sexual pleasure as well, but just pleasure of touch. There's so many different areas that we just close everything off because it might touch sexuality, and we're like, oh, it's a bit scary, it's taboo, it's not just this normal open conversation for many people. Yet it's the one thing that most of us do, most of us desire. In the main differentiator in a relationship, intimate relationship, is that you have sex with that person and you don't have sex with other people. Generally speaking, you can have open relationships, but generally speaking, that's the difference, where you're my friend and you're my partner. I don't have sex with you, I have sex with you, right? And it's just so funny that I find it just amusing now, but I used to be like, oh, it's a bit awkward, and awkward, that's the word that most women use. I used to be exactly the same, that we all do something, or we want to do something, or we like to do something, but we don't talk about it. And so when it's taboo, when it's uncomfortable, when it's censored, when it's repressed, and we don't talk about something, we don't feel free in it, and we're not learning about it. You know, these days, many people, boys and girls, learn about sex through porn, you know, or magazines, or reading something, or from our parents, or, you know, seeing it on a movie, or it's not through open dialogue and open conversation about, you know, through puberty and desire and all of these, and intimacy and connection. It's, you know, it's just different ways that we haven't been conditioned growing up for most of us. So then when it comes up, and like I used to teach a lot of feminine embodiment, and so when it would come up in conversation, it's like, oh my gosh, let's go there, you know, let's just dive into that, because that's like, obviously in a program I create a really safe space, and they feel very comfortable to talk and share and ask questions. And so that is where women want to focus, and they want to connect with themselves. We want to feel that connection with ourselves. You know, we want to feel that we trust ourselves. We want to feel connected with us, so then we can connect with another. We kind of all know that is what needs to happen, and the gateway. But then it's like, well, how do I do that? Like, I don't know the right way to do this, the right way to do that. And so it's this beautiful exploration journey that I like to take women on, to feel that trust, connection, and confidence within that connection with themselves, to then be able to be that and share that with another.
And I suppose it kind of goes into, like, you know, if you've been suppressing that for so long, it will show up when you start to date and when you start to get into relationships, because then it's almost like a block there. And then if it's not talked about, like I know from, you know, years of dating and relationships, where when it was not talked about, it was just like an action or a thing that gets done, and then that's it. And it's like there was no, you know, and then I've been with women that were very open about it and very in touch with their own sensuality and pleasure, and being able to, I guess, experience or be aware of those sides of it was like, oh, interesting. Even with myself, you're not aware of it until you get told about it, or unless you have a conversation about it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, like you said, whenever those conversations come up, whether it was shut down by a parent or a partner or not friends, right? Apart from men's circles, I don't really know of many scenarios where men are just openly going, oh, you know, what do you do for pleasure? It's not really that question, but maybe this can plant some seeds for people.
And I would imagine in your experience, like the difference of being with a woman who you're noticing is repressed, and then a woman you're noticing is like confident and connected in herself, is like literally night and day. And, you know, I've worked with so many women who feel like, oh, I don't want my partner to see my body, or whenever we're intimate, like it's in the dark, or it's quick, or I don't really like it, because we don't have the emotional intimacy to then want to have the sexual intimacy, which is a really big thing for women specifically. Or the shame involved, and like, oh yeah, we don't talk about it. Like when I talk and when I share and I teach and I talk to my friends, I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to do something with someone, if I'm going to share my body with somebody, then you bet I'm talking about it. And they're like, what, you talk about it? I'm like, of course. It would be strange not to for me. And it's not common. People go into like a sexual intimate interaction with somebody, especially if they're like dating at the start, and they haven't spoken about anything before. They haven't spoken about what they like, their boundaries, what they're open to, expectations, pleasure, nothing. And when I say, oh no, I'm like having a full conversation beforehand, they're like, oh gosh, how awkward. And I feel the opposite now. I feel that it's awkward by not awkward, but it's like so odd now to not talk about it before and not have that relationship and that connection with that person on that level. So then they know, yeah, I like this, I don't like this. You like that, I don't like that. And to be able to create a beautiful, sacred, safe, healthy space. So, you know, communication really comes into it, and emotional intimacy really comes into it all before you get to that.
Yeah. I guess there's two elements to this, or two different sides, where it's like the self side of like understanding yourself and you know, creating pleasure and all of that with yourself, but then it also is the side where if you're in a relationship, where that comes into it too. How did you even get onto this? Like, where at which point did you go, I want to, well, hang on, where was it most impactful for you? Was there I guess a story for you where it was not so much a story, but a time where it was like you weren't connected to that, and then you were, and then you noticed that changing things?
100%. So I, like many women, many people, was, I guess, repressed. I felt like I repressed or suppressed my sexuality, and I was disconnected from it, disconnected from my body, from my pleasure, sensuality, all of it. And I wasn't confident in that area because I hadn't allowed myself to go there and to express that. But I was curious, like many people, and I actually went on a retreat, and it was called a Sexual Sovereignty Retreat. I had no idea what that meant. None of us. It was a group of women. Like none of us had any idea what that meant, and we all just rocked up, and then we were like, "Oh, okay." And it was deeply exploring pleasure, deeply exploring sensuality. Dance, movement, pleasure, the pelvic bowl region, you know, all of it. So many different aspects that...
Tantra?
It wasn't Tantra. Yeah. No. It was a little bit, I don't know how you would even explain it, but not Tantra. So yeah, it was just, it's just so funny because we all had no idea. And we're like, that's so interesting. We all just rocked up, flew internationally, and we're like, what's this going to be? And it was, for me, it like unlocked something. It made me feel so connected to my body and to myself and to my truth. And it just felt like this sexual awakening. And it was just women there, but the relationship with myself. And I just came home, was like, wow, it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world. I learned dance, and like we were doing striptease. We were doing like all these like temple nights, like sacred, beautiful, intimate things. Not actually having sex, but like really intimate pleasure, sensuality, exploration. And I was like, all of us, you could just see all of us over the 10 days just blossom and bloom. And that is the one area for many women, many adults, that just is waiting to be unlocked, the sexuality area, right? We look after ourselves mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually and financially, and we ignore sexually, right? And when we do that, it's like, you know, the missing piece, and it's like the cog starts to turn smoothly. And so I just felt that in every area of my life. And then I started teaching like pleasure in general. And like I said, pleasure isn't just sexual pleasure. So I started just sharing about pleasure and creating little programs, and women were just like, yes, yes, yes. And then teaching more of the feminine embodiment side, including pleasure and sensuality. It just obviously leads straight into sexuality and intimacy, sexual intimacy. And so just seeing the conversations from this kind of awakening, for want of a better word, that I felt like I had, this unlocking for myself, the shifts that created in my own intimate relationships, And then sharing that with the women in my programs, they were like, what are we talking about? And how is this happening? Like, how long are you having sex for? Like, what are you even doing? Like, it was just so interesting. Crazy. Anyway, you're like, oh gosh. It was just fascinating what women were just craving to talk about and learn about, and to go there and to have someone be like, okay, let's go here. So that's how it really all began, and it's just unfolded like very organically and naturally. That's why I said, now being like, okay, this is what I do. It's like, oh, this is what I do. It's just so, it wasn't how it kind of came about initially. It was all just a very natural process. But now this is what I teach.
Awesome. And what would you say has been the biggest awakening of pleasure for you? Because you were talking about like there's so many different variants, and I guess we're not taught that it's one way, but it's just we're unaware that it's so many different ways. What's one form of pleasure that you never thought you'd have that's amazing you now?
The biggest for me from that retreat, and that now I practice nearly every day, is dance. This like just moving my body and being in my body. And it's hilarious because growing up, you know, many women have a circle of friends, and I had a group of girlfriends, and it was like, who's the worst dancer? Sally. Always. Like, I thought it was funny because it was true. Not like picking on me, but just the truth, right? Who's the brunette? Sally. Who's the worst dancer? Sally. And now they're like, wow, can you show me how you dance? And I couldn't dance like a choreography. I couldn't. If you told me, it would be not good. But to move and in this way where I just allow the music or allow my energy to move my body, it looks like I can dance, but I really am just moving my body and like connecting in this pleasure-filled way, this sensual way. So that just shifted everything. And now all of a sudden it's like Sally can dance. And I'm like, interesting, because I technically can't, but it appears that I can.
I can move.
I can move, that's right. But it's really not, it just happens to look good. So when it feels good, it looks good. Like I've got no idea. And then people are like, look at it. I'm like, oh yeah, it does look good. But it's just this connection with myself that is so rich in pleasure. It just feels good to feel so connected and free in the body, you know, without thinking and wondering what it looks like. And, you know, we are up here so much. And when we just release that, and that was part of the retreat, was really about just noticing when we were learning dance, how much we would get into our head and be like, oh, okay, I'm thinking again, and then to relax into the body and then move and then go, what does it look like? Oh no. And then we, you know, it was just this back and forward. So yeah, that was the biggest thing for me.
Well, isn't that just so relatable in terms of, you know, anything that you're doing, if you're in your head, then that's that disconnection from the intuition, from your body, from your natural state. When you can drop back in, you know, whether you're talking about sex or whether you're talking about sport or performance in any means of the way, if you're in your head, you're just thinking and you're not feeling. Then when you're in your body, you're actually feeling. So what is it, from what you've been, even with yourself, but also with your clients, what does it take for someone to feel pleasure or allow pleasure into their life more?
There's a little bit of a, I guess, deconditioning process, because the number one word that women identify or think about when I say how do you feel if I say the word pleasure, we got to explore pleasure. The word is awkward, right? So it's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And so when you feel awkward, you kind of tense and you contract. So it's getting past and moving through the awkwardness, the shame, the fact that it's taboo and it's not talked about, and, you know, so many different conditions that we have had placed on ourselves as humans, but specifically as women. Working through that, talking through that, unpacking that in a way that is just welcoming a new space. You know, I'm not like, let's try and fix this. I don't have that approach, but definitely just welcoming this connection and this revelation to come. And then we just go gently into the senses, like sensuality, like exploring these senses before we getting anywhere towards like intimacy, like sexual intimacy, but being able to notice all the sensations that are around. And like I said, the pleasures of every moment. Like there's pleasure, there's 100 different pleasures in one day that we can be experiencing and noticing or ignoring. You know, we can either be mindful or mindless. So that is kind of the introduction process, I guess, into that.
Yeah. My, I guess, framework that I work with everything that I do now it's an old Delphic oracle: know thyself, love thyself, be thyself. And I guess when you look at pleasure among there, like if you don't know, what is pleasure for you and what pleasure feels like for you, then you will feel disconnected from, feeling, which in turn turns to love, but then also being. And I guess creating that safe space like you were talking about for women, men, whoever, to talk about it. Make it normal. Like I think that anything, like whether we're talking about finances, right? Total different topics, but it's the same sort of thing. If we don't talk about it, then we don't know more about it, and we can't know how it feels within the body. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting that the places where people start and how you can get them from that place to there. What would you suggest to your clients if they've come from a place of feeling really awkward about pleasure? Maybe they're in a relationship or not in a relationship. How can they start to, explore that for themselves individually, but then also in a relationship as well?
Mm-hmm. So I definitely always suggest, and we start with ourselves first. So like you said, the safety piece, the conversation piece, to actually just feel comfortable that pleasure is not just, the genitals. There is so much more pleasure in all different areas, and to really connect through the senses. This is kind of where I start, through the senses, exploring the senses and seeing what things in your life bring you pleasure. Like I said before, sipping that first sip of coffee when you it's like, you feel it, right? And if you're watching the sunset and it's on your face, you feel it, right? You're experiencing this, you're seeing the beauty of it. Or if you see a dolphin diving through the water, you're like, So rather than just experiencing that in the mind and through sight and in the head, I guess, I invite women to kind of experience that in the body and receive it. Like when I see a dolphin, someone just goes, dolphin. I go, and I feel it in my whole body. I get this pleasure through my whole body because I've trained myself in that way. So everything, all these little things feel good. Everyone's like, you're so happy all the time. But I'm like, it's not just happiness, because happiness is fleeting. It's in the body. Yep. So exploring the senses is the first place to start and see what feels good, what excites, because we're all a little bit different, right? We all like different things. So exploring where you feel and experience pleasure, and then getting curious to go deeper in different areas that feel safe.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of each one?
Okay. So like I said, with sight, when we are watching a sunset, we're often just watching the sunset with our eyes, and then we take a photo, and then we're just kind of like, okay, done. So to actually be noticing and experiencing that sunset and the different colors and then the clouds, and really noticing the beauty, because it changes, the sunset changes moment to moment, and receiving that and putting the phone away, because then we can just get distracted and go into another world. And we're trying to capture it for later rather than enjoy it in that moment. So sensuality, the senses, pleasure, it's in the moment. It's not in the phone. It's not somewhere else. So to be in that moment and just to really notice through sight that and experience the sunset. If we're going to taste like chocolate, dinner, whatever it may be, really be mindful. And that's why if we are eating, drinking, distracted, we're not even noticing. Sometimes you're like, I finished my dinner because I was working at the same time. I didn't even notice. I just engulfed a whole sandwich, right? You had no idea. So mindfully, again, mindlessly and mindfully, eating and tasting each flavor. We often don't notice the creaminess and the sweetness of the coffee, and then the warmth, and then it's like when you're having a conversation and someone talks about lemon and you start salivating. It just it's so cool, but that's the sense. That's your sense of taste. And then if we're moving into touch, so one that I like to practice with ourselves is like just a gentle, non-sexual touch with ourselves. And it's something that I'm often doing. Like if I'm sitting, I'm often like just stroking my arm. It just is this very comforting movement. But it's a touch. It's I guess, relationship with myself, and that comfort that brings. You know, if you're with a partner and you're just like tickling their arm, it's lovely. Well, we can do that with ourselves and like really feel that. Or another idea that I give women is when you're slapping on your moisturizer in the morning or body oil, rather than like slap it on like a crazy person, like really massage every area of your body. Because we're still putting it on, but are we doing it, again, mindfully and enjoying the process? Or are we just quickly, you know, getting through the day and doing the things, drinking the coffee, doing the meditation, going to the yoga, eating the breakfast, and then getting out the door? Or are we actually present through it all? What else have we got? Sound. So music is another way that we can, like, we feel music. Sometimes we just listen to podcasts and we listen to music in the car and we're not really present and taking it in. But when you do, and when we do, we can have deep pleasure in the body. We can feel it. You know, a piece of music like moves you, or it brings you to tears, or excites you. That's all in the body. That can all be an experience of pleasure. And then what else have we got? Hearing?
Smell.
Yeah. I just said that. Smell. So for me, it's interesting. For me, that's flowers, but that's just me. I love flowers. But smell can really anchor us into a moment. So we can bring ourselves back to a moment. Like if you've smelled an apple pie and your grandmother used to cook you an apple pie, right? It really brings you back, and you can imagine like, oh, I remember when she would pull it out of the oven and then put it on, and you'd have a moment. You'd have that connection. So smell can do that as well. If you have a scent that you wear or that you burn or whatever it may be to create pleasure in a moment or to create a mood or whatever that may be. But just getting curious about exploring different smell, scents, and use them to anchor into moments as well can be really powerful.
I'm starting to kind of piece together the correlation between, you know, your sensuality, pleasure, not sensuality, pleasure, being present and mindful in those things, and then that invoking your senses, which then gives you emotions, which then allows you to feel that moment or that thing or whatever. And I know in my meditations and workshops, every sense is covered. Like we have certain smells burning, we have certain drinks, cacao, let's say, to then the music, to then what you see, closing your eyes and visualizing and stuff like that. Like there's more. You can gain more from the experience when you're, as you're beautifully saying, mindful rather than being mindless in it. And it's so simple. You're not saying things like, go and buy this and you'll feel this, which is what we're ultimately being sold in a lot of things, is you need this in order to feel this. It's like, no, you're being you, but you're just slowing down and being mindful in everything that you're doing, therefore experiencing pleasure in whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always say that you can't have pleasure without presence, right? Because pleasure is in the moment, and the only way we can be in the moment is if we're present. And most of us are going through the day like bang, 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 get this done, next, and we're missing every single moment, right? We drink the coffee, but it's like, oh, it's finished, it's gone. Or it's cold if you're a mum and you never get to it, you know. Whereas if we can just be a little bit more mindful and inject and invite a little more presence, we can experience pleasure throughout the whole entire day.
Yeah. And you're not, like, this is the thing, it's like, it is, and like, I'm sitting here because I'm like, oh yeah, this is a great mirror to me to, you know, I make my coffee, right? I grind the beans. I like the smell. I make it. Probably can be a bit more, not have to be, can be a bit more mindful when I'm drinking it. But the action of doing it and even being aware that I can do this in a certain way. The podcast one was interesting when you're like listening to something, being present with it. So I've gone through a real emotional stage in my life recently. So every song sets me off, every sad song. And when I make the clips for the podcast clips, they're all really emotional songs because I want people, this is really cool, right? Because people are watching and listening to this. So when you go to the Instagram, go follow check out all the clips. The ones of Sally are going to be awesome. But I put certain songs on a certain message. I am editing it and crying because I'm like, for example, there was one from Jem where it was like, you don't know how long you got left to live and it could be taken away tomorrow, right? The certain song that's on there, it's To Build a Home by blah, 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 slow and reverbed. I listened to it and of course I'm starting to well up, but that's what I want. Oh, this is a different conversation, but similar. I want people to look at this content, this podcast, and feel it. Like they're in the room. We could do this via Zoom. You're not going to have that feeling. I want you to feel that as a guest and friend, but also as the audience as well. It's why I love doing the live shows when I did them. But even watching those clips, like I guess intentionally I'm putting it out there. So I want people to, on a platform that everyone's so go, go, go and 3 seconds and switch and change. And my nervous system is shocked looking at it. I want this content to be a break where they can take a breath and they can feel it. I want them to get emotional about these messages because I want you to feel it. And that's when people are going to not just consume it, but they're going to, I guess you could say integrate, but they're going to feel it. Hear it, but feel it, not just watch it type thing. And I think that this relates back into so many different things in terms of relationships, sex, because you were talking before, you're passionate about relationships, so we can keep it on that topic too. The self stuff is really awesome because I think anyone listening right now, you can kind of, take note and be like, oh, how can I be more present right now? Oh, sorry, I'll bounce back. Where the music one come into it was when I was going through, the past 18 months have been a shit show for me, right? If people that listen to the podcast would know that. Go back to episode 168 and I explain a little bit. But it was sitting in my sauna and listening to certain songs. And they weren't songs that I normally listen to because I'm normally like, depending on my mood, right? Right now it's techno and hardstyle. That's not what I was listening to in the sauna. But it was more softer, gentler, one instrument sort of things. And the podcasts I listened to, it became so much more intentional, but I took in everything and it was really impactful. Like the 2 episodes I listened to with Peter Crone and Richard Rudd, I kept repeating those 2 because it just kept sinking deeper and deeper. But normally when I listen to a podcast, which is very rare, I'd be driving or I'd be doing something and I just wouldn't be present during it. Or right now, like I'll sit on my couch and edit stuff while Joe Dispenza's talking on YouTube. And it's like, am I taking it in? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not actually sitting, being present with it. Then relating that back to my work, right? I do support work during the week for NDIS clients. And one of the days I was just noticing myself like always checking my phone or always on my phone. And I was just like, I can do that, but I can also be really present and not be so consumed by those other things. And did it change the interaction? Not like a huge difference, but for me in itself, it was like, when I'm spending time with my son, I've been told and I've looked at other people raise their children, no judgment, but I'm like, I don't want to be on my phone. If I'm taking a photo, different story. But the good part about social media, seeing people say, like, if they're seeing you on your phone, they're seeing where your priorities are and they'll fight for that attention, blah, blah, blah. I don't want that to be the case. I'll take a photo, bang, 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 or video. It's away. I've missed phone calls. I've missed appointments and all those things, but I'm like, if I'm present with him, then that's going to create the best relationship there. Mm-hmm. So not so much in that does give me pleasure because it's sharing a relationship with someone and presence.
Yeah. And we can feel when someone's present with us and we can feel when someone's not. Right? And if you're on a date with someone, like, yes, you're talking about parenting, but if you're on a date with someone and they get distracted by their phone every time it flashes, like you're like, they're not here. Like I could just leave. Of course they're engaging with you, but you don't feel it.
Yeah.
And you don't sense that they're paying it full attention to you and taking in everything. They can miss things. Oh, what was that? Or they're not really engaged in a way that is creating intimacy that's going to move the relationship forward, you know? And then, so we need that with ourselves in our relationships, whether it's with children, whether it's with each other, and to feel the pleasure and everything with ourselves. And then also intimately as well, we need to be present. Like if we're in our head, we're somewhere else and we're not going to be feeling good about whatever we're doing and engaging in. So it is a practice in all areas, and, you know, it all crosses over, everything touches everything. So
yeah. And I think that when you were saying that, like the things that come up for me are like when you're, that's the example we shared, was like on a date and stuff like that. Or even the person that's, maybe they're looking at their phone, or maybe they're distracted by all these other things. And I'm saying this with my phone here with a timer, because the camera's going to turn off at a certain point, and looking to see if everything's in focus. But if someone is doing that, like you were saying before, like we can go back to the senses and stuff like that. But when I've sat with people that I know it's awkward to, at the start, to keep eye contact. It is, because when, you know, I've done eye gazing and things like that, but I know that that's when I'm looking into your eyes and I'm present, right? If I'm everywhere, then I'm not. Mm-hmm. And when I'm sitting with someone and I, like, for example, their phone on the table, right? It's something for me where I go, I'm going to keep mine in my pocket. Like, I don't want it there. I don't judge, because I'm like, you know, whatever, but I can notice when someone's being distracted, and it's just, you know, I'm not there to judge and be like, put your phone away, but it's like, yeah, it's a shame, because it might be something that they, at that time, I don't know, maybe they struggle with being present. Maybe that's the thing, and that's like their safeguard of something. I don't know. Like, this is where I'm trying not to judge the action, because I know that maybe it's a habit or a reason behind it. But I would say a society that is so distracted right now, like in your clients, is that something they're coming to you with? Is that I struggle to just sit and be present in those things?
Yeah, I think it's across the board. People struggle to be present, right? And a phone is like a safety net for people. You know, you see people in the post office line where they're lining up for 45 seconds and they can't just stand there for 45 seconds. They're on their phone, right? And I'm consciously like, I want to be in the world. I want to interact with my world and the community. And if I'm just looking down, I'm not going to notice anything. I even see people on their phone walking, and I'm like, you're about to walk into me. I wonder when they're going to notice. And then they don't notice, and I have to go around them. I'm like, what is even happening? Like, it's this modern way of living where we're not present. This is across the board. And it's really a shame. And I agree. The second the phone is on the table, you're like, oh, you feel it. It's like there's a third person there. You know, it's like, oh, this isn't just you and me. It's you, me, and your phone, it's bizarre, but it is, because the second it rings, they leave. They leave the moment. And, you know, I can remember in past relationships when that was something that was coming up for them. I was like, okay, when we go out for dinner, the phone cannot be on the table. Like, that's the rule now, because this is ridiculous. We're just gonna have an hour dinner and you can't be on the phone. Like, that is, obviously that relationship didn't last very long, but well, it lasted too long actually. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But we want to feel the moment generally, and especially with somebody. Like, we all long for that connection, to be truly seen. And it can be scary, but it's also what we truly most deeply desire, is to be seen and to be received and to be heard and to be loved in that. That's what everyone deeply wants. You know, when you feel misheard by somebody, or you feel like someone ignored you, it's because you're not seen, right? And also being seen, eye gazing, can also be freaking terrifying, right? People are like, oh, I can't do it, I'm just looking away. And we laugh and we pretend that, like, oh, we have to look away, because to be seen is also deeply terrifying. It's exposing. So it's so interesting. It's like we want it, but then we're scared of it, because we haven't been taught and conditioned to have that intimacy. You know, we've been having eye contact the whole time. We're comfortable in this. But for a lot of people, it would be easier to be talking to the plant, because then I don't feel like, oh, you're penetrating me in some way, right? It's intimate. It is. Like, eye gazing is intimate. So it's interesting. But when we can get past the feeling exposed and to allow somebody in and have that experience, then it's like, I just want more. I want more intimacy. I want more connection. I want more presence. I want to go deeper. And that's how I've noticed over the years, and just like more, deeper. I mean, that's a very female thing as well. Like the feminine, we want more and we want to go deeper. We want more and we want to go deeper. Like, I can't get enough love. Love me more. It's just like this desire of the feminine. But there is just layer upon layer to continue to explore in this area, and it's just so fun. So it's very individual for all of us. I would suggest starting with the things that you love, because we all have things that we love that maybe we aren't allowing ourselves to do, to explore, to practice. Like something for me I was mentioning is dance, but also I love getting creative and using my hands to create things. So I practice pottery. Now, I've taken people to pottery and they're like, right, I'm going to make something, I'm going to get it right. And I'm like, oh, no, you're missing the point. This is creative. This is not about getting it right, and it's fun, and like we're feeling the clay, and it's actually funny. I liken pottery on the wheel to making love, because you've got to really feel the clay, feel the, like you can't just put it here and make this work and turn it, like it just doesn't work like that. And you got to have it all slippery, you know, it really just makes it all. But anyway, I'm going off topic. Pottery. Let's come back to that. I love it, and it's creative, and it's even like anywhere I go, any studio I go or teacher, they're kind of like, oh, you're not actually making anything, like you're not coming out with a product. I'm like, no, I'm trying to like learn this and practice with this and play with this, and I don't care if I don't have a tangible something at the end. It's the experience for me. And I think this is where we often get everything kind of mixed up, is that we are trying to create something and come out with an outcome or with a tangible something. And you know how we kind of talk about self-care is things that we do for ourselves. Yes and no, but with pleasure, it's about being present in the moment. The outcome, the product, that is not the focus. The focus is doing and being in the thing that you're doing. You know, we can do yoga, but are we actually being with the yoga and the moment and ourselves, or are we just doing it? You know, I always think of this one day that I was practicing yoga, and then the class finished and this woman rolled up her mat and just rushed out the door and elbowed everybody, because obviously she had to go to work. But it's like, you know, that's why they think they started saying like, take the yoga off the mat, because like she looked all very zen, and then she was like, rah, and like knocking people over and just very mindlessly going about her day the second that the class finished. So we want to be able to be in that present state of curiosity and play, and enjoying the moment in whatever we're doing. So thinking of things that maybe we haven't done or allowed ourselves to do, and dive into them and just be really immersed. You know, that flow state. You know, we love when the time just flies by. And we're like, oh, that's what I love to do. Find that and explore that. It doesn't have to be for 8 hours every day, but that is going to connect you with yourself and identify the things that really do bring you pleasure.
And what about in a relationship?
To create more pleasure in a relationship. So for many women, emotional intimacy needs to precede sexual intimacy. So to engage in conversations and to feel really heard and seen by our partner is going to feel really good, and then going to open us up and make us feel safe to then want to dive deeper. So a lot of the times women will desire to have intimate conversations with their partner, and you know, you can do that with, you know, little conversation cards that are like more intimate, more playful, more like more sexually charged questions or whatever it is. Just to create that connection can be a really kind of, I was going to say, more easeful way to engage in these types of conversations and intimacy. For some people that can be overwhelming and confronting, but to create that emotional connection and that emotional intimacy is going to really feel safe for most women first. But the more that we feel the pleasure and have that connection within ourselves, and if we're in a safe relationship, a healthy relationship, then we're going to have that anyway. So the connection and that confidence and that pleasure and that connection with ourselves then just translates into the bedroom or into the relationship. And then it's learning how to maybe ask for what you want, or talk about different things, or suggest different things, or say, hey, actually, I'd like this, or whatever it may be, and create that if we're looking at it sexually. But then pleasure in a relationship can be like, can we have some fun? Can we actually go and do something that really feels good, and go on a tasting, go to a restaurant that has a tasting menu and sit there and talk about all the different flavors and what that reminds us of, and go on this journey and experience together. That can be both experiencing pleasure with your clothes on with your partner, right? There's so many different areas and angles that we can go to.
I think looking back over my life, it's the conversations I've had with women, especially a lot of my clients are females, and hearing a lot of this from the opposite side, and even when it came to dating and stuff like that, I'd put into what they were saying into practice, and probably used it to my advantage in a lot of the ways. But it was still in the way of, I think if you, from a male's perspective, dating a female, if you show that you're genuinely interested and you ask deeper questions. I remember when I was, many years ago, on dating apps, and the first question I would say is, what are you grateful for? It would stun a lot of people, because you'd either get nothing, and I'd be like, well, definitely not talking to you if you can't find anything to be grateful for. But then the other side would be like, wow, no one asks that. It's normally pickup lines. And not to say use that, it's just something that I was doing at that time, and I probably wouldn't do that now. But the conversation starter that it would create would be a lot more in depth of a conversation than how's your day, which is not a bad question, by the way, is to ask how you are, but those average questions that don't give any depth.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people want depth, especially people who have more of a growth mindset and are self-aware, right? We want emotional depth, and especially in conversation. The surface level stuff, especially on dating apps, it's very painful, especially if you're having that same conversation with 5 people and it's surface and going nowhere. But if there is that one person that asks a deeper question and is curious about you, if someone doesn't show curiosity in me based on my profile and being like, oh, that's really interesting, I'm going to ask her a question about that, then that isn't showing me that there is something, except, I feel disconnected already. And I don't feel inclined to lean in and explore. But when someone is curious and they know something about you and they ask for more information, the one thing people love doing is talking about themselves. So it's not hard to create that. But not everybody has that kind of curiosity mindset and wanting to go deeper and to learn about each other. But that is definitely a little tip if you're on a dating app to ask deeper questions and hold space and go deeper with people, because that is what we all want. It comes back to what I was saying about being seen and felt and present in the moment. So important. It's what we all want.
And why do you help people do this? Why'd you choose to do this? You don't have to. You've done many things in your life. Why specifically this now?
Yes. Well, I guess that's the question I was also asking myself. As I said, it's come very organically, but it has also, through that little awakening and unlocking of myself, it's enabled my relationships with my friends and also with partners to go so much deeper and to have that next level conversation, that next level intimate connection, that next level emotional support and intimacy that was just not present in my life beforehand. And like I said, that is what we all want, but we don't know what we don't know. And if we can't even envision it, I had no idea that 10 years ago, the types of relationships with my friends, same friends and new friends, and in my intimate relationships, where they could go and what depth and intimacy and connection and exploration and fun and play and all the things and pleasure existed. Absolutely no idea. We don't know what we don't know. But for so many women, like I always felt like, oh, there's something like I'm feeling a bit held back there. I'm feeling a bit disconnected there. We are very in tune. We are very intuitive beings. And so I always knew there was something that there was more to, but I didn't really know what it looked like. I didn't know what it felt like. I had no idea. And so now I have access to this, and I'm seeing, and the more I talk about it, women are like, yes, oh my gosh, yes, I want that. Right? Because I'm showing them this is available. And I want to support them to experience what I'm experiencing, because it has changed my life completely. And as I was saying, like new friends and old friends, since that retreat, that awakening and that unleashing that I was talking about from the retreat happened, my old friends are like, whoa, you're like a completely different person in a good way. Like I feel more connected with you, and the way that you express yourself and how confident and happy and joyful you are, it's completely different. And my new friends, they're just like, that's just Sally, right? That's just all they know. But it's so interesting to have that contrast and to see, and to have that felt by my, long-term friends who now really see, wow, that's what's possible. And then I get to share all of that with them, and we get to go deeper, and you're an intimate relationship. There's just no end of depth and intimacy that we can create and experience. And it's just the most enriching, part of my life at the moment. So I want to share it with as many people that really want that too.
Yeah, I love that. I love seeing that evolution happen as well, and being a friend along the way, because it's like, it's really inspiring to see, because it's like we think we've got to almost be one thing, and that's the thing we are for the rest of our life. But you and I both, there's been so much evolvement and growth, and it's not to say that thing didn't work. It's just that things evolve, and now you're into this evolution and helping other people evolve in this area. And why do you think it's important for people to connect back in with themselves and feel more pleasure in their daily life?
I think it's part of our purpose. I truly believe that we're here to evolve and grow, and also enjoy every moment. And we've got all these senses all over our body. We're one of the only animals that feels pleasure in the way that we do. I truly think it's part of our purpose, to enjoy life and to have fun and to explore and to go to all the places and the depths and the realms. Like I believe that's part of our purpose. It's not what we're here to do, what our career and like what we're going to do, and like that's not our purpose, I don't believe. So pleasure is our purpose.
I love that. When you said we're the only animal or thing that feels the pleasure, I'm like, could you imagine, right? I'm imagining you drinking your coffee and being like, wow, taste, flavor, this coffee's so good. And then I'm imagining like two goats in the field, like eating the grass and being like, man, did you taste this grass? Like this is some good shit. Like, like, do they do that? I don't know. I don't speak goat or cow or any of those things, but do dogs sit there and go, wow, that was amazing? Or is it just us?
I would love to think that they are just high on life and grass. Like that would make me so happy.
I only say goats because like our family's had pet goats for years. But yeah, look, I don't know. I don't speak the language, so I'm not sure. But it's a cool thought. But it's like you do see people that are so happy, and some people will see that as, you're weird, like why you? It's just coffee and stuff like that. But it's when you're just present and joy, I guess, feeling pleasure, which then allows you to feel joy as well in those moments, which is really important. If you had one more post that you could do on social media or wherever, you couldn't post again, you're okay. You haven't gone anywhere, but it was the last thing you could post to share a message with anyone about anything, what would you want to say?
I mean, there's so many things I could think of, but the one thing that comes, there's many things, but one around the connection and the relationship that we have with ourselves is one of the most important to cultivate and cherish and attend to. I really believe that. Like I said, we're the person we go to bed with and we wake up with, and there is nothing more challenging than not really liking that person that you go to bed with and wake up to, and that you don't trust them and that you don't feel connected to them. We feel alone in our own shell and our own selves. So I would really remind people that that is worth cultivating, and that you're an amazing person and your own company is incredible. And to really remind them to explore that relationship with themselves through trust, through pleasure, through all of the things, whatever feels good. All of that just continues on. But yeah, that would be what I would share.
Beautiful. I love it. Do you have anything to share with people listening, watching, you'd like them to know, or where you would like to send them to connect with you?
Yes. So at the moment, I am in the creation process of a program that is going to support women to really connect in with the sensuality and pleasure, to enrich their relationships. So that is coming. I go through a bit of a process to create that. So that's where I am right now. So that will be coming out around October. And October, November, I should say. So Instagram is my favorite place to hang out. I see that as a community. I share my heart on my posts, and there you can also sign up to my love notes, which is effectively an email. It is not a newsletter. It does not look like a newsletter, feel like a newsletter, sound like a newsletter, but I love writing in long form, and I share my heart on a page every Sunday and expressing myself and things that I'm going through and growing through, and teaching through that as well. And I have a very loyal readership, and they love it. And if I miss it, they contact me and say, where's my love note? Because it's very, it's very well received and loved. So I would recommend that as well. But that you can find that at Sally Jane Douglas on Instagram. So come play.
Beautiful. And everything obviously will be linked in the show notes and all of that. Just click wherever you're watching or listening, and go check out all the things that Sally does. And obviously you said you got things that are evolving and being created. So there's lots to look forward to. Probably not by the time this comes out, but hey, it's in near future, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
yep. Beautiful.
Definitely.
Well, I appreciate you as a friend and as someone that's come on the podcast multiple times. I think that's really special because there's multiple times people can go back and listen in, and that's one of the things where I was like, if I get the same people on again, like I've got these really cool friends, I always had this thing of like, I can't have them back on again. They're going to share the same thing. But it's like, we've evolved so much even in the year since we last spoke. So each time we do that, it just kind of blew that barrier out of my own mind, because I was like, nah, like we're cool people. We should have lots of conversations, because I literally want this to be like a conversation where we would be having at dinner or we'd go for coffee and would have somewhat similar, probably about different topics, but hey, like somewhat around the similar topics as well. But you've always been a great friend of mine and support, and I appreciate you and all the work that you do. It's great to see that you do it. I'm not doing it, and I don't want to do it, so I'm glad that it's you doing it.
I love that.
Like you're in your thing is what the world needs, and I'm graciously grateful, if that's a saying, to have you here and to share all that today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Well, for those listening and watching, if you're not watching, please go to YouTube and watch this. That's always cool. Do all the things, like, the share, subscribe. I think the biggest thing here is that if something has stood out to you, inspired you, maybe you can relate to something, like, don't feel afraid to reach out to myself, or probably more importantly to Sally, because, that's where Instagram, you can DM people. I've never been afraid to reach out to someone after I've listened to a podcast. It's how I connected with Sally and everyone else, was just a DM saying, hey, love what you do. Didn't ask for anything, but it's just that little introduction. But also, just this morning, a friend sent me a podcast. It was what I was watching on YouTube before this morning, distracted with my coffee. If you feel that you know someone that would benefit from this, like, send it to them. Like, what a really nice thing to be like, hey, I think you might like this, and I like this, and maybe share it on your story, tag both of us and say, got so much out of this about pleasure, about this, about that. Share it. The things that we share with people that aren't listening right now could get them to listen, and then inspire them in their relationships to feel more pleasure, more joy, more emotion, more all the things. Yeah. So do that. Share the clips. And thanks for tuning in. Anything else you want to?
Just thank you, and I'm grateful for you too. Thank you for having me.
Love it. Let's do it again soon.
Yes.
Love it. All right. Take care, everyone. Peace.
Bye.